Well, let's get started. And hello, everybody. We're talking today about, oops, let me get that back. Uh, Weight loss primarily is a topic, but we're also talking about your life in general with this topic today. We're talking about glycine and NAC, N-acetylcysteine, if you don't know what that is. This is based on a study in the December issue of the Journal of Nutrition. And most of what I will talk about today is straight out of that article. I'm kind of following through there. It's a review article of some people's research at Baylor University. Now, let's talk about first what is glutathione. Glutathione is a tripeptide. That's 3 amino acids linked together. The cysteine, well, the glutamate and the cysteine are gamma peptide linkage, not a normal peptide bond, but the cysteine and glycine have a normal peptide bond. And this kind of helps it from completely breaking down in the body from digestive enzymes. Glutathione itself is not very useful as a supplement because it gets digested in the digestive system and appears to be very poorly available to people if they take glutathione. So you'll see up here, we've got basically in the structure up in the right-hand corner, glutamine, a cysteine residue, and on the right there, you can't quite see it for the people, glycine. It appears that the amino acids, cysteine and glycine, their availability is what's the rate limiting step or rate limiting aspect for making glutathione in the body. Glutathione acts by becoming oxidized by dangerous oxidative products and forming a less dangerous one. Glutathione, and this is important, is synthesized in individual cells as it is needed. Therefore, measuring circulating concentrations of glutathione is not really very useful because most of it is intracellular. However, there's a big advantage to that. Most antioxidants are circulating antioxidants in the body, like vitamin E, vitamin C, things like that. However, sometimes you'll see that the research finds that high levels of these antioxidants, the nutrient ones, do actually more harm than good. And that's because they're kind of unregulated. And oxidative processes are important in the body. So antioxidants are not necessarily a good thing in every situation. Furthermore, antioxidants, most of them are not really just antioxidants. They're redox agents that can actually function as pro-oxidants and antioxidants, depending on the situation. So you have some weird things going on with antioxidants, and they're not very straightforward. But basically the real advantage to glutathione is that it is made right there in the cell as the cell demands it. So as long as you have all the parts that it needs, the building blocks, it will be available to the cell when it needs it. It'll make it. Now, why is glutamate not a rate limiting consideration in the glutathione synthesis? Well, actually, it's pretty simple. The body has a lot of glutamate compared to the other ones. If you kind of go down that list and see plasma concentrations of amino acids, if you look down here at the bottom, oops, go back there, you can see glutamic acid. Well, you can't really see it really well, but the next one over, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to see it, but you'll see they have about 30 to 40 times as much and in some cases more, of glutamic acid and glutamine in the cells as they do almost any other, than any other amino acid. There's huge amounts of it. And the reason for that is that glutamate and glutamine are breakdown products of other amino acids. Proteins and amino acids are constantly being degraded and new ones made in the body. That's going on all the time. And so there's constantly glutamate and glutamine being made from other amino acids. And that bottom figure, it shows that leucine goes back and forth there, aspartate does, and some of the others. So glutamate is always going to be there, available in very high concentrations. And it's a really rare thing for anyone to need to take a glutamate or glutamic acid supplement. There are exceptions to that. There are people with inborn errors of metabolism, heritage diseases that have glutamate and glutamine deficiency, but those are unusual. And so generally, there's plenty of glutamate around. It is an important neurotransmitter. It's not that it's not important. It's just that it's in the body very abundantly because of the way proteins and amino acids are metabolized. However, the other two amino acids in glutathione are not that readily available always. The cysteine and the glycine frequently are not there in that high of doses. So this is the talk we're going to be, this is the paper from the Journal of Nutrition, December issue, that we're going to be discussing. Now, boy, that title says that the glycine NAC, which they use for doing it, and most of the time people nowadays are just using NAC, but glycine NAC supplementation improves glutathione deficiency, oxidative stress, mitochondrial dysfunction, inflammation, aging hallmarks, metabolic diseases, muscle strength, cognitive decline, blah, 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 on and on. It's like it's saying that just about anything that could be wrong with you, that can fix it. Okay, that's a pretty big statement to make in a study like this. But this is the first, there's 2 or 3 editorials right at the very first of that issue, but this is the first issue in the Journal of Nutrition that particular month. And it's a good article. I mean, it's a good journal. And this is a good article. I recommend that people who are interested in this read it. But it's a very good article, actually. But let's talk about, what they did, why they're making that kind of claims, and how well they can justify it. Well, when we're talking about glycine and NAC and glutathione, really a big part of the whole issue is with the mitochondria of the cells. If you don't know, mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell, the part of the cell that burns fat. It doesn't make all the energy in the cell, but it makes by far the vast majority of it. There's a little bit made in the cytoplasm of cells also. But really, if you kind of liken this little organelle to a car, or the cell to a car, this would be the engine of the car that takes the fuel and converts it to energy and makes the thing run. And that's part of your body. Almost all the cells in the body have mitochondria. Actually, a few that don't. But that's what really makes your body run. And if that gets messed up, almost everything in your body gets messed up. So it's that critical. The study here in the Journal of Nutrition evaluated the effect of glutathione on mitochondrial function. That was a big part of it, and some of the effects thereof. the first study that they had compared young and older adults. The old adults had less glutathione synthesis, very low red blood cell glutathione, so the intracellular in there, not measuring plasma in the blood, but the cells in the blood, had elevated oxidative stress in the older adults, impaired fatty acid oxidation. So that's where we're really coming into the weight management. Low intracellular concentrations of cysteine and glycine, the rate limiting products for making glutathione. So that kind of indicated that maybe not having those amino acids might be the problem. However, supplementing with glycine and NAC, NAC being N-acetylcysteine again, which is one of the preferred sources of cysteine. But supplementing with glycine and NAC for 2 weeks normalized their concentrations along with glutathione synthesis and intracellular status. The supplement also lowered oxidative stress, corrected insulin resistance, and normalized fat oxidation. So it did a lot of the things that we were hoping it would do, they were hoping it would do, and we wanted to do. However, was it really due to the glutathione repletion? It's always possible that some other factor could be involved, or that the glycine and NAC were working separately from glutathione. So in order to understand that a little bit better, they went to a mouse study. They seem to always be the go-to guys for things we can't figure out in humans. So the first study, they had 2 pair-fed groups that were given an inhibitor of glutathione synthesis. Those with the inhibitor did have impaired synthesis, low tissue concentrations of glutathione, and impaired fat oxidation like the humans had. So it was a short study, but they did show those effects. And that kind of linked it to the glutathione deficiency that was being the cause. Then they went a little bit further with a second mouse study. This study kind of mimicked the human study by using old versus young mice. The old group was divided into 2 subgroups that were fed identical diets, except that one was supplemented with the glycine and NAC and the other was not. The old mice with the glycine NAC had a much higher glutathione level, much lower oxidative stress, higher fat oxidation, better insulin sensitivity, and less total body fat. So in these mice, it helped them lose weight too. Actually, they had much stronger effects seen in the second mouse study than the first human study. But the first human study was only 12 weeks. So they wanted to see if a longer term supplementation would have similar effects in people. Okay, let's look at the glycine NAC longer term. The supplement period, older adults, and in this case, they were 70 to 80 years old, my age range, supplemented with glycine and NAC for 24 weeks. Okay, twice as long as before. The healthy older adults compared to the younger had GSH deficiency at first, inflammation, chronic inflammation, endothelial dysfunction, muscle weakness, physical and cognitive decline, and multiple aging hallmarks. So a lot of the things that you expect to see in an older age group, things that I'm pretty much trying to avoid myself, but pretty typical in the age group. All of the above were improved by 12 weeks like before, but they were really had made a lot of progress at 24 weeks. So they found there again that these kind of things with the two amino acids, glycine and cysteine, as NAC, really made a big difference. Then they did a washout period at the end of the 24 weeks. The glycine NAC was held back. All of the improvements associated with the supplementation had disappeared by 12 weeks without the supplement. Suggests that continued use may be necessary to have sustained benefits. And as safety goes, during the trial, there were no adverse effects reported. And liver enzymes, which are a sensitive marker of toxicity, were not elevated. So that was a pretty good set of results. They also looked at, reported that the glycine NAC reverses five of 9 hallmarks of aging that are characteristic of all species. Those 9 hallmarks, and I don't know what the other 4 are, I can look that up, but these are things that you find in all life forms, from fruit flies to mice to monkeys to people. That are characteristic things that go wrong with aging. The first was mitochondrial dysfunction. It improved both mitochondrial biogenesis through PGC1 alpha, which, if you remember back to our first lecture, we talked about that controls making new mitochondria in the cells. And it's stimulated also by endurance exercise. So here we find it also being improved and acted upon by glutathione. It improves the altered intracellular communications, especially noted with inflammatory activity and altered immune recognition. It improved the dysregulated nutrient system sensing, which is another one that's a hallmark of aging. And one of the major ones is insulin sensitivity. It improved insulin sensitivity. Genomic toxicity. Chromosomal damage is a big hallmark of aging disorders. And the 8-hydroxy-oxyguanosine is a marker for serious DNA damage. And all of the older people had elevated levels of that. However, they were significantly decreased with the supplementation, but went back up once that study was halted. So there you see again, the chromosomal DNA damage was prevented by the glutathione. Then cellular senescence. That's a sort of a term for gradual deterioration of functional characteristics in living organisms, people, other animals, or whatever. This is also often linked to inflammation and is referred to as inflammaging. And that was very obviously improved. So these hallmarks, what you call central hallmarks of aging, out of 9, 5 were improved with this. And in general, it's believed that we don't have anything really to reverse the hallmarks of aging because it's an aging process that continues. But what we're seeing is that this appears to be a fundamental disorder of aging, the low glutathione levels in the cells. And it appears that a lot of the problems associated with aging are linked to low glutathione. Now, there's plenty of room for more research on this, but it's very interesting to consider. Now, one of the things that I'm not quite sure about, I haven't been able to run down, is the benefits of NAC over just L-cysteine. I have somewhere there must be a study that compares them head to head, and I haven't found it yet. And there are people out there who think that using L-cysteine is better. And I don't know if any of you remember Dirk Pearson and Sandy Shaw. They wrote a book, Life Extension, back in the late 70s or early 80s. So most of you weren't reading those kind of books then. I was. But it was an unbelievable book, huge book, talking about ways of using mostly nutrition, but some drugs as well, to prevent aging. And it really was a big hit back then, and so well documented. Now, a lot of the documentation is pretty old, obviously now, but we're talking about a book with I think 700 or 800 pages, all documented, just all through it. I mean, they must have had, well, they had several thousand references, I think, in that book. I mean, it was really an amazing book and hard to pick up almost. So, but anyway, they are still in business. They have a company that sells supplements, I think, but they recommend using L-cysteine instead of NAC. And I'm not sure I agree with them. However, we may find ourselves having to do that. There's a battle going on right now with the natural food industry and the FDA over NAC, because back in the, I think, mid to late 1960s, it was applied for to be a drug. It never did become approved as a drug. But according to FDA regulations, if anybody ever applies it for a drug and it hasn't already been used as a supplement, then it can't ever be a supplement. It has to always be a drug. Now, they've gone for 50 years and ignored that and let it be sold. But suddenly, in the last year or so, they've said reverse that, and they haven't really accused it of having safety issues. Just that it was applied for as a drug license back 60s, and so it shouldn't be sold. So I'm not sure that that's in court right now. Most companies are still selling NAC, but we'll see how that develops. But I'm not sure anyway if it makes a huge difference, because L-cysteine is what you're really wanting. That's one good way of getting it, apparently. And I don't know how much better NAC is over L-cysteine. So I'll just be upfront about that. I'd like to find a study that really does compare them head to head. Okay, let's do a summary of what we've talked about so far. We've had, this is our third talk, and this is a shorter one than most, because I was really just covering this one paper in the Journal of Nutrition. But we first talk on weight loss. We talked about endurance and resistance exercise, how they're both very important for maintaining muscle mass and muscle function, and how L-leucine appears to help. Now, there's a paper, actually a preprint, supporting that in the Journal of Nutrition, but it hasn't come out in the published form yet. So I've read the preprint on that. They just put it on the website this week. So, but there's been some other ones that kind of dispute that. Now, I think the real reason comes down to, the best as I can tell, the leucine doesn't work that well just if you sit around watching television and popping pills. It's not the way it works. Combined with exercise, I think you get a pretty good effect from what I can tell. So exercise, both endurance exercise and resistance exercise, and leucine. First of all, then also realize that your body's going to resist your weight loss if you've been overweight for a while. And we talked about that New England Journal of Medicine article that showed after 1 year, your body had not really adjusted to your lower body weight. And people that did that, it was still trying to kind of fight back and get the weight back. So it may take several years of weight loss before you really start getting it starts getting easy. Let me put it that way, if it ever does. Also, we talked last time that we really need to eat a diet low in simple carbohydrates because they seem to have a really disproportionate effect on gaining weight. And almost any weight loss diet that works really restricts simple carbohydrates, sugars and starches primarily. Diets higher in protein and fiber are wonderful. So, you know, that's something that you really need to consider if you're trying to lose weight. And you really need to just eliminate sugar from your diet. The other thing that we talked about is intermittent fasting. Seems to really work well. And these are things that you can just, you know, really make a part of your lifestyle. I've been losing weight some. I need to lose a little more, but I've been taking 1 day a week and fasting. And then I also restrict myself to about 2 meals a day, try to avoid eating between meals. And these are just simple things that can be part of your lifestyle and get your weight under control. And then we talked about today using NAC and glycine to improve your mitochondrial health and fat burning. And at least in the animals studies, they did lose weight without making other changes. Now, I don't expect most people to really lose a lot of weight just by taking those 2 things. It's usually not that simple. But it could be a part of your overall health program long term to use a few simple things like this to maintain mitochondrial health and a good body fitness. And these things really do need to become a part of your lifestyle because, you know, if you lose weight, it happens all the time. People lose weight and then after they get to where they want, they go back to the way they were eating, the way they were living before, and gain it all back. Most people have gone through that cycle multiple times in their life. It's really easy trap to fall into. So these kinds of things appear to be life changes that you need to make. And that's what I've been stressing for the first part of this series is how do you change your life so that when you do lose weight, you can keep it off and be healthy. Next time we'll talk about a few things that you can take it a step further for losing weight, some supplements and things that will be more directly weight loss supplements. These things would probably not be part of your life from now on that we'll talk about next time. They would be things that give you the extra help. But what we've talked about so far will be things that would help you both lose weight and maintain it long term. So that's our talk for today, a little bit shorter than usual. But I thought this study was so interesting that I really wanted to talk about it because it had a lot of really valuable information. It showed a series of studies, how they did it, why they reached the conclusions that they did in the series of studies. And it really made a lot of sense and well documented. Anybody have any suggestions or questions or observations?
It's very interesting article. I just brief searched it. The author, I think they published a pilot study on a diabetic patient. So they found a similar effect. So they found that the glycine NAC supplementation improves, impair the mitochondria fuel oxidation, and lowers insulin resistance in patients with type 2 diabetes. So they just published this year.
Right.
So like, did that review paper mention about the dose, like how much we should eat, take the
Yeah, they did,
NAC
and
and the glycine?
yes, they did mention the dose, and I'm still. It's actually a kind of, well, no, the review paper didn't. One of their other papers did that they were in there, and I've got that one here. But the dose, I'll look it up real quick, make sure I tell you correctly. It's it won't be understandable for most without doing some calculations. But let's page here. Okay, they were provided capsules of glycine to give 1.33 millimoles per kilogram body weight per day. And they were given cysteine at 0.81 millimoles per kilogram per day. Now, I had a couple of things. Millimoles, for those of you who don't know, moles tells you how many actual molecules there are. So if you have 1 mole of this and 1 mole of that, one may weigh a whole lot more than the other, but they'll have exactly the same numbers of the millimole of the molecules that you're looking at. So you have to calculate that out for those doses. What I was kind of puzzled at, it was higher than I thought when I calculated. I might have to go back and do my calculations again, but I think I was right on that one. So it was a pretty high dosage, and I'm not sure that you would want to take that for years, for instance. So we'll look at that a little bit more. The other thing I was kind of puzzled by it, I would have thought they would have done those in equimolar amounts because, it takes 1 molecule of cysteine, 1 molecule of glycine to make 1, combined with 1 of glutamate to make the glutathione. So you need equal moles of each. And so why they had a lot more moles of the glycine than the cysteine, I wasn't quite sure. And I've looked back and looked for their reasoning on that, and I haven't gotten to it yet, haven't found it. But it may be that your body simply has more of the cysteine, and it's more likely to be deficient in the glycine. I don't know. But they probably have a reason for that, but I was kind of curious about that. But yeah, anyway, the dose was per millimoles per kilogram per day was 1.33 for glycine and 0.81 for the cysteine. So that ends up being pretty, like I say, a fairly high dose. But yeah, they do have that available.
Okay, so is there a supplement that contain both of them?
Not yet. I don't know. I've ordered them, but everything's coming in slowly these days.
Yeah, you can make one. That'd be easier to take
like
one
I ordered
instead of
the
2.
ingredients for it. I'm going to have it.
But probably you need to find out, I think the paper may justify why they use different molar amount.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to be looking for that because I was kind of surprised by that actually. Now, and the NAC is a lot heavier, molecular weight than the glycine, and it looks like they were using almost equal weight amounts when I looked at that. Probably, I don't know whether they just did it that way and then calculated out the molar amounts for the paper, or if they really had a good rationale for doing that. So I'm not sure on that. But at any rate, whatever, it did seem to work pretty well. And so it's really, everybody has NAC or cysteine out there. the Dirk Pearson and Sandy Shaw, I'm not sure if what they say makes sense, but they feel like the NAC, if you take that, may acetylate other molecules in the body and cause problems. I don't know if, that's theoretically possible. And they do a lot of theoretical stuff. But, I'm not sure if that's a real concern or not. I haven't heard of that being a problem. Let me put it that way. But that's what they say. And, I'm not going to put them down or anything. They're pretty smart people, actually. So.
Yeah, I think my impression is like people use NAC instead of cysteine because the NAC is more stable than cysteine.
It
So,
might
but
be.
NAC kind of like a carrier of cysteine, so.
Cysteine may break down.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's possible. Yeah, I wasn't quite sure on that. I think it would be fairly stable in the capsule, but maybe it is broken down more easily in the digestive system or something like that. That's possible. A lot of things do that. So that wouldn't surprise me. Anything else? Does anybody did everybody else understand it? Because sometimes I know Shingman and I might understand things and not realize that the rest of you are not understanding them. So if you need any explanations, this is the time to ask. Shingman and I can explain it if you don't understand it. Do you all have questions, or was it understandable?
I have a question, Dr. Jim. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. How are you, North?
Okay, I'm good. Thank you. This is very interesting. I'm a person that has taken spirulina. I eat it like it's candy for years. And I had read that it was high in glycine, actually. It's one of like the top 10 foods that's high in glycine.
Okay.
And I was just wondering if you thought it needed to be something more isolated to be of benefit rather than just being in the spirulina.
Actually,
because I don't know how much is in there. I just read that it was high.
Yeah, but being high in glycine, still, these are relative amounts. So I'd have to see really just how high to see if you're getting enough to make a big difference and not use the glycine. Because glycine is not present in huge amounts in proteins. So because there's like so many different proteins, amino acids and proteins, basically 21 of them, or 20, depending on what you want to call it. But so I would really need to see how much you're taking and look up spirulina and see how much is in it to be able to answer that very well.
Okay, well, that's your assignment then.
Oh, it is.
Okay. I want to figure that out. We'll talk about that later, but thank you.
Sure. I mean, all of these amino acids, the leucine, the glycine, the cysteine, they're all in foods. But for whatever reason, as we get older, people just seem to be deficient in them. I don't know if I think it's more of a digestive issue in a lot of cases. But it could be that people aren't eating as well as they get older too. So I'm not always sure why, in this case, that the older subjects would have a deficiency in 2 non-essential amino acids, whereas the younger people didn't. It may be, the non-essential amino acids are also ones that your body can make from other amino acids. That's one of the reasons why they're non-essential. It may be that there's something going wrong as people get older. They're not making those amino acids in the body as well, too. So, I don't know the answer to that. But for some reason, people seem, as they get older, to not have those amino acids as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Appreciate it. And, these are just simple things to help us stay healthy. Well, any more questions, comments? Okay, then. I guess we'll sign off, and I hope you all have a great rest of your week. It's been, we're living in interesting times. I'm glad that the coronavirus is decreasing here. I wish it weren't in some of the other parts of the world. Korea and Hong Kong particularly are really having it rough right now. And I think China has more too at the moment, spilling over from Hong Kong, basically, from what I've heard. So, but stay healthy, take care of yourself, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you guys. Bye.